Rain drummed on the windshield in a steady, impatient rhythm as Eli Mercer eased his pickup onto the Fremont Bridge. The wipers squeaked across the glass, smearing a line of sodium-orange streetlight before clearing it again. On the dash, a yellow check engine light glowed like a quiet threat. He kept one hand on the wheel and glanced at the passenger seat. June's sneakers sat there, toes turned toward each other, the fabric so thin at the front that the shape of her big toe pressed through. He had wrapped clear tape around the worst spot that morning. It crinkled now under the light, a cheap bandage on a problem he could not afford to fix. He heard her voice in his head, bright and certain. "They are not broken, Daddy. They are just breathing." He had laughed then because what else could he do? Tonight the memory made his throat feel tight. The bridge rose under them. To the left, dark water lapped at the pilings and carried a reflection of the city in torn pieces. To the right, a row of houseboats and the hulking silhouette of a container crane. Seattle looked almost gentle from up here, fog softening the edges, hiding everything sharp. On his phone screen propped in the cup holder, 3 notifications waited. Rent due on the 5th. Final notice, Puget Sound Energy. A message from his supervisor asking if he could pick up an extra night shift at the warehouse. He had already taken every extra shift he could. His back ached from it. His eyes burned from overhead fluorescent lights that never shut off. And even so, the math said the same thing every time he sat down with a stack of bills and a cheap calculator. There was not enough. The bar came into view as he rolled off the bridge and into Fremont. Neon beer signs glowed against wet brick. Bicycles were locked along the sidewalk, their frames shining with rain. Eli parked at the far end of the lot, where the lamps were dim and the paint on the lines had peeled away. He checked his phone again, 6:14 p.m. One more notification had joined the others. Overdraft alert, balance below 20. He locked the truck and walked toward the bar, shoulders hunched against the drizzle. His shirt collar was already damp. The soles of his boots, old and soft, slipped slightly on the slick pavement. For a second he thought about turning around, driving home heating soup from a can, and pretending this text from Derek had never arrived. Then the image of June's thin mattress in their small apartment floated up. The way the draft slipped under the living room window in winter, the way June pretended not to notice when the lights flickered, because the bill had been paid at the last possible second. He pushed open the door. Warmth and noise hit him at once. The bar smelled like spilled beer fryer oil and the faint tang of bleach. The Seahawks game played silently on 3 different screens. Someone had fed 20s into the jukebox and left it on a classic rock playlist. A cluster of guys in hoodies shouted at a dartboard near the back. Derek Shaw was at a high-top table near the window, already halfway through a pint. His leather jacket hung on the back of his chair. His hair looked more styled than Eli remembered from high school, but the grin was the same, wide and careless. "Mercer," Derek called, lifting his glass. "You look like hell, man." Eli pulled out the opposite chair. It scraped on the sticky floor. "Long week," he said. "What's this about a favor?" Derek nodded toward the bartender. "You want a beer first?" "I'm driving." The answer came automatically. A beer would be nice, would make the world fuzzier at the edges, but he had to be up at 4 to work the loading dock. Every dollar that was not rent or food felt like a sin. "Suit yourself." Derek took another swallow, wiped foam from his lip with the back of his hand, and leaned in. "You remember Colin, right? Rich Colin, big, White House in Magnolia. His parents had that weird greyhound that hated everyone. That would be the one." Eli remembered more than the house. He remembered a garage full of bikes, all newer than his car, a kitchen with marble counters, and a confident, lazy way Colin had of assuming the world would shape itself around his plans. "He'd get himself into trouble?" Eli asked. Derek laughed. "Nothing serious. He just has a date he does not want to go on." Eli frowned. People cancel dates every day. "Normally, yeah, but this one is a setup. Friend of the family. His mom's favorite charitable project." Derek swirled his beer, watching the foam cling to the glass. "He needs someone to go in his place." The words landed slowly. "In his place, how Eli said?" Derek shrugged. "He shows up, plays nice, then ghosts her. Drama, family lecture. He wants to skip all that. I thought I was here about a job or something." Eli sat back, the chair pressing into his spine. "I do not know how to fake being someone else for an evening. That is the beauty of it." Derek leaned forward again, voice dropping a notch. "You do not have to fake being him. You just have to be disappointing." Eli stared. "What? Look, the girl is, how do I put this? Not his type." That is what he said. Derek looked around, then lowered his voice a bit more. "She is really short, like not just petite, medical kind of short. He already tried dodging it, but his mom is on this whole kick about inclusion and giving her a chance. So, Colin agrees, but then he calls me begging to find a way out without looking like a jerk. And this is your big idea, Eli said. Send someone in to be a different kind of jerk. Not a jerk, Derek protested. Just boring, awkward, painful to talk to. She leaves thinking it was a bad match, no big deal, no hurt feelings, no scene. Everybody moves on. The jukebox clicked over to a new song. A server walked by, trailing the smell of hot wings. Eli watched a drop of condensation run down Derek's glass and form a wet ring on the wood. Why me, he asked quietly. Because you clean up okay in that normal guy way, Derek said. You are not going to show up in a tailored suit. You look like a guy who stocks shelves or fixes things, which is perfect. She will know something is off, but not big enough to make a fuss about. She just thinks the date sucks and goes home. Eli's jaw tightened. You know I have a kid. I do not have time for someone else's games. That is exactly why you should say yes. Derek reached under the table and slid an envelope across. It scraped softly. 600. Eli did not touch it. The number hung between them. 600. In his head, it shifted into shapes: 3 weeks of groceries, 1.5 months of electric and gas, the back half of rent if he begged the landlord for a little more time. You would be doing him a favor, Derek said. 2 hours at a fancy restaurant you would never step into otherwise. You show up, order something, talk about the weather, let it be awkward, and you go home. 600 cash. No one gets hurt. That is not how that works, Eli said. Come on. It is dinner, not an assassination. Worst case, you sit in silence and stare at your plate. You are good at looking miserable. Eli gave a short, humorless laugh because resisting the joke would mean admitting how close it was to the truth. He picked up the envelope. It felt thicker than it looked. He opened the flap enough to see stacks of folded bills. 20s, 50s. His pulse skipped. The bar noise faded for a moment, as if someone had turned down the volume on the whole room. He saw June's 2 small sneakers again, the tape catching on the frayed fabric. He saw the red stamp on the overdue notice that had arrived that morning. He saw the way June had watched him open it, pretending to color at the table crayons lined up by shade. What happens if I say no? Eli asked. Derek lifted his hands. Then you go back to hauling boxes for minimum pay and praying your truck survives another winter. I finish my beer. We are still friends. I just have a pissed off client, and I might not call you next time there is an easy 600. The word easy lodged in Eli's chest like a splinter. He thought of asking more about the woman, about her life, about why Colin did not have the spine to cancel on his own. The questions rose, then fell. Every path led back to the same place, 600 on the table or nothing. He closed the envelope and slid it into his jacket pocket. It felt heavy against his ribs. When is it, he said. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Serafina on East Lake. You know it. I have driven past it. Perfect. I will text you her name, what they told her about Colin, all that stuff. You just do your thing. Eli pushed his chair back. His knees ached as he stood. My thing, he repeated softly. On the way out, he had to shoulder the door open against a damp gust of air. The rain had eased to a mist fine and cold on his face. He crossed the parking lot and climbed into the truck. For a long moment, he just sat there listening to the engine idle. On the passenger seat, June's sneakers weighted, their taped toes pointed toward him like a question he did not know how to answer. The next day crawled by in pieces. Eli stacked pallets until his shoulders burned. He scanned barcodes until the lines on the screen blurred. Forklifts beeped in sharp little bursts that drilled into his skull. Now and then, he would check his pocket to feel the thick rectangle of the envelope and then jerk his hand away as if it had shocked him. On his lunch break, he sat in the break room with a plastic container of leftover spaghetti. The sauce had dried around the edges. He stirred it with his fork and saw just for a second a white tablecloth, a shining fork, a glass of red wine held in a slim hand. He closed his eyes, then opened them and forced himself to eat. At 4, he clocked out. At 4:15, he was in the parking lot, sitting behind the wheel, staring at his reflection in the dark glass of the windshield. His beard was a little too long, his hair curling at the back of his neck. His shirt had a smear of grease on one sleeve. He drove home, climbed the stairs to the apartment, and unlocked the door. June sat cross-legged on the living room floor, coloring a picture of a horse with wings. The television murmured in the background. The smell of canned tomato soup hung faintly in the air. Hey, Bug, he said. She looked up, smiled, and lifted the drawing. It is a Pegasus, Daddy. See, that means it can go anywhere it wants. That's so, he said. His voice did not sound like his. She squinted at him. "You look tired. Are we still reading tonight?" "Yeah, of course." He made boxed mac and cheese for dinner. June talked through the entire meal about a girl in her class who had brought a glittery lunchbox and a boy who could belch the alphabet. Eli nodded at the right times. When she asked why he kept checking the clock, he said he had to run an errand for work. "You work at night again?" she asked, lower lip pushing out a little. "Just tonight." She seemed to think about that, then nodded as if making a trade with herself. "Then, can we read 2 chapters of the horse book when you get back?" He wanted to tell her that by the time he got back, he might not be able to look her in the eye. Instead, he said, "We will see how late it is. I will try." At 6, his neighbor Mrs. Lang, a retired nurse with an endless supply of sweaters and patients, knocked on the door. June ran to hug her. They had an easy rhythm now. Mrs. Lang settled on the couch. With her knitting, June curled up next to her with her Pegasus book. June called "Love you" as he grabbed his jacket. "Love you too," he answered, and closed the door. In the bathroom, he had shaved and changed into his one decent shirt, the light blue one with buttons that were all still attached. He had wiped at the crease lines with a damp towel and hung it near the heater to steam. Now, as he slipped it on over his t-shirt, the fabric felt too thin. He kept imagining more expensive cotton finer, stitching a different man in a different life. Serafina's front entrance looked even more intimidating up close than it had from the road. The windows were tall, glowing softly from within. Warm light spilled out onto the wet sidewalk, catching on raindrops and turning them into sparks. Inside, he could see the curve of a bar, lined with shining bottles, a sweep of white tablecloths, people in dark suits and dresses that shimmered when they moved. His truck felt small in the valet line. He almost stayed behind the wheel when the young man in a black vest stepped up to his window. "Here for dinner at Serafina, sir?" the valet asked. "Yeah," Eli said. His hand tightened on the steering wheel, then let go. He got out, trying not to think about the rust spot near the back wheel. The host's stand stood under a spray of white flowers. A woman in a sleek black dress smiled with professional warmth. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "I think so," he said. "Name should be Price." She checked the screen, then nodded. "Right on time. Your party is already seated." She picked up 2 menus but only carried one with her. That single menu felt like a verdict. The restaurant hushed as they walked through, not completely silent, just wrapped in a kind of soft comfort. Jazz flowed from a speaker in the corner. Someone laughed at the bar, the sound low and polished. Eli caught a whiff of garlic and lemon butter browned in a pan fresh bread. He followed the host past tables where couples leaned close, where glasses touched gently, where watches gleamed on wrists. His shoes made a dull sound on the hardwood. They stopped near the windows at a small corner table with a candle and a glass cup. She was already there. She sat on a regular chair that had been fitted with a firm cushion and a footrest that brought her feet up from the dangling distance to a stable platform. The black dress she wore was simple, with clean lines, the fabric falling perfectly. Her hair, pale blonde, framed her face in loose waves that brushed her shoulders. A leather bag hung from the back of her chair. Her phone rested screen down by her water glass. For a second, she did not look up. Eli saw the angle of her head, the set of her shoulders, the faint tension in her hands where they rested beside the fork. It looked like someone trying to sit still and not look at the door every 10 seconds. Then her eyes lifted. Whatever was in them at first vanished almost instantly. Something else slammed into place. Confusion, then calculation. Then a sharp cooling distance that made Eli feel as if the temperature in the room had dropped 10 degrees. "You are not Colin," she said. No greeting, no smile, just 4 words delivered like a diagnosis. Eli froze for the space of 1 heartbeat. The host cleared her throat softly. "Can I bring you something to drink to start?" she asked. "Water is fine," the woman said. Say ye, never leaving Eli's face. The host took the hint and slipped away. Eli sat down because his legs did not feel entirely reliable. The candle between them flickered, throwing light across the silverware. He tried a smile. It felt stiff. "Hi, I am Eli. I know you are not Colin," she repeated. Her voice was calm, not loud, but the couple at the next table glanced over anyway, sensing something off. She noticed and lowered her volume a fraction. "I have seen his picture," she said. "His mother showed me. So, here is my new question. What are you doing here?" There were several answers within reach. Traffic wrong time. Mix-up with reservations. Friends sitting in until Colin arrived. He could feel each lie lining up in his throat, waiting for him to pick one and live inside it for a few hours. He opened his mouth. He closed it again. She watched this little drama play out, one eyebrow lifting. That bad, huh? She murmured. He picked up his water glass to stall. The rim was thin and cool against his lip. The water tasted like nothing like air, like the inside of an empty glass. Look, he said softly. I know this is not what you expected. She leaned back slightly, her hands moving to rest in her lap. What I expected, she said, was the man whose name is on that reservation. He did not grow a beard and lose 2 inches since Tuesday, so try again. Her eyes were not unkind, they were focused, assessing. Eli set the glass down carefully. His palms were damp. He wiped them on his jeans, then realized how that must look in this place under these lights. I was asked to come, he said, to sit here tonight. By who? A friend. I do not think we are using the same dictionary for that word. He almost smiled. It died quickly. How much, she asked. The question startled him. How much are they paying you, she said, to sit in this chair and make me feel like an idiot? Her tone had not risen, but it carried a blade. The truth shoved against his teeth until his jaw ached. 600. She had said the number of dollars, not hours. 600 to turn this evening into a disappointment. 600 for the way her shoulders had tensed when she saw him. He should lie. I should go, he said instead. She tilted her head. Now you want to leave? That is interesting. I did not come here to hurt you. But you did, she said simply, whether you meant to or not. Which circles us back to my question. How much? He stared at the candle. A thread of smoke curled from one side of the wick, carrying a faint smell of wax. 600, he said. Silence settled over the table. Her mouth quirked. It was not a smile. $600, she repeated as if tasting the number. That is what my evening is worth. I needed the money, he said. The words sounded smaller out loud than they had in his mind. Everybody who does something cruel needs something, she replied. Money, attention, a good story to tell later. That is never the interesting part. He flinched. I was supposed to be boring, he said. That was the plan. To be forgettable, not to mock you, not to make a scene. I was just supposed to sit here and talk about traffic and Seahawks stats until you decided it was not worth a second date. She laughed. The sound was sharp and quick, like glass knocking against glass. So thoughtful, she said. Colin did not want to offend me, so he hired a stand-in to offend me more politely. It is not like that. Then explain it to me. He looked around. Everyone at every table seemed to be minding their own business, but he felt watched anyway. He imagined himself from the outside, a man in a cheap shirt at a nice table, with a woman who knew exactly what was going on, while he scrambled for a way to make himself look less like what he was. Do you know what people usually do when they find out I am a little person? She asked suddenly. They either talk to me like I am 5, or they talk to everyone except me. Her nails pressed into the fabric of her dress. Or if they are really creative, they make me into a dare, a joke. Something to prove to their friends that they are open-minded, that they are not shallow. Really look at what they did. I am not making you into anything, he said. I am telling you the truth. You are telling me the part that makes you feel a little more noble. Her gaze did not soften. You took the money, you got dressed, you drove here, you let them get this far with their plan. Do not sweep that under the table with a sigh and a sad story. He wanted to tell her about the overdraft alert, the red notice on the utility bill, the nights he sat at the kitchen table counting coins. He wanted to tell her about June's taped sneakers and the way she slept curled on her side, clutching a stuffed horse that had lost one button eye. He could feel those words lining up next, begging for their turn. Yes, he said instead, I did all that. For the first time since he had sat down, her eyes flicked away, just for a moment, toward his hands on the table, the knuckles roughened from warehouse work, the faint tan line where a ring used to be. Her gaze came back sharper. I have been stood up 3 times, she said quietly. Once a guy texted me from the parking lot, said he had seen me through the window and changed his mind. I have had men take bets on whether they could get me to go home with them, because apparently that is a fun way to spend a Friday. I stopped dating for 2 years because I got tired of wondering which version of awful I was getting this time. Eli felt his stomach twist. This, she added, is creative. I will give you that. I am sorry, he said. The words felt thin. I do not care if you are sorry, she replied. I care that you were willing to do it. The candle between them sputtered, then steadied again. He pushed back his chair. The legs made a soft scrape on the floor. I should leave, he said. I was not supposed to make a scene. That was the rule. So, I will go. You can order whatever you want. Put it on Colin's name. At least the food will be worth something. Her jaw clenched. For a second he thought she might throw the water in his face. Do not you dare make this about my free dinner, she said. You think a plate of pasta makes up for anything that happened the moment you sat down? He swallowed. No. Good, she said. Go then. Go spend your $600. He did not correct her. He walked out the way he had come, past the bar, past the white flowers, out into the wet night. The air felt cooler on his face than it had when he arrived. He tasted salt and did not know if it was from the rain or his own skin. At the curb, he handed his valet ticket to the young man in the vest and watched him jog away. In the reflection of the restaurant window, he could see Tessa at the table, still sitting upright, still composed, a small figure in a black dress framed by the glow. When the truck pulled up, he climbed in and shut the door. The envelope in his jacket pressed against his ribs like something lodged there and refusing to move. He rested his forehead on the steering wheel for a long moment, listening to the soft patter of rain on the roof. On the passenger seat, June's sneakers waited, where he had left them, frayed toes pointed straight ahead, as if they were already on their way somewhere else. When Eli pulled into the apartment lot, the rain had thinned to a fine mist hanging under the streetlights like smoke. The building loomed gray and familiar, paint peeling around the stairwell door. He turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, fingers still gripping the wheel. The envelope in his jacket felt heavier than the keys in his pocket. Upstairs, the hallway smelled faintly of someone else's cooking, an old carpet cleaner. Light leaked under his own door. He could hear the low murmur of the television. Mrs. Lang opened when he knocked, even though he had his own key. She must have been waiting. "You are back early," she said, glancing at the clock on the wall behind him. It read a little past 9. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," he said. "Thing got canceled." Her eyes searched his face for a second. She did not push. June fell asleep on the couch. She wanted to wait up. "I told her we would leave the book on your chair." He managed a smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Lang. I appreciate it." She patted his arm, her hand cool and thin. "I will see you two tomorrow." Inside, the apartment felt smaller than usual. The living room lamp cast a yellow pool over the thrift store couch. June lay curled on one end, hair fanned across the cushion, fist closed around the strap of her stuffed horse. A paperback chapter book about a girl and a wild Mustang rested on Eli's empty armchair, a bookmark sticking out halfway through. He picked it up, then set it down again. He eased June's shoes off, noticed how the taped toe had started to peel. He tucked a blanket around her and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She stirred, eyes fluttering open for a fraction of a second. "Daddy," she murmured, already sliding back towards sleep. "Did your work errand go okay?" "Yeah," he said, though he was not sure what that meant anymore. "Sleep bug." He stood there for a moment, watching her breathing settle into a slow, even rhythm. Then he went into the tiny kitchen, pulled the envelope out of his jacket, and laid it on the table. Under the fluorescent light, the paper looked more ordinary. Torn corner, slight wrinkle near the flap. He opened it all the way, this time spread the bills out in a fan. All that green, all those numbers, all the things they could pay for. On the counter behind him, the overdue notice for the electric bill was held to the fridge by a magnet shaped like a smiling sun. The red letters at the bottom said, "Final warning." He stacked the money again, tucked it back in, closed the flap, and wrote one word across the front in block letters. "No." He stared at it until his eyes burned. Sleep did not come easily that night. When morning light finally crept through the thin curtains, it was watery and gray. Seattle light. Eli left June with Mrs. Lang again and drove to the address Derek had texted him. The building sat in South Lake Union, all glass and steel, and carefully placed trees and square concrete planters. Inside, the lobby smelled like espresso and new carpet. An elevator carried him up to the 6th floor, where a co-working space stretched out under exposed beams and industrial lighting. Desks, plants, people in hoodies with laptops and expensive headphones. Derek sat at a high table near the back, a laptop open in front of him, phone in his hand. He looked at home here. The leather jacket was gone, replaced with a fitted blazer. "Eli," he said, glancing up, "you look like you have been up all night. Good sign. Date must have been rough." Eli placed the envelope on the table. Derek's smile flickered, as if someone had dimmed it. "What is that?" "Your 600, Eli said. "Our 600, Derek corrected automatically. He tapped in the envelope with 2 fingers. "What happened?" "She figure it out. She knew the second she saw me," Eli said, "because she is not stupid." Derek gave a short laugh. "Well, that is on Colin. He is the one who sent a picture to his mom. Could have at least picked a guy who looked like you." "That is not the point," Eli said. Derek looked more closely at him. "You look like someone hit you with a truck." Eli thought of the way Tessa's eyes had hardened, the way her voice had stayed steady. He thought of the moment she asked how much. "Take it back," he said. "Give it to Colin. Tear it up. Burn it. I do not care. I am not keeping it." You already did the job, Derek said. You showed up. You sat down. She walked away offended. Mission accomplished. Whether she knew the plan or not, Colin got what he wanted. So do you. I do not want it, Eli said. Derek leaned back on his stool chair, tilted slightly. You have a kid, right? The one with the horse phase. You sure you want to throw away $600 that could buy a lot of pony books and mac and cheese because you feel guilty about something that cannot be undone? Eli did not answer. Derek tapped the envelope again. His tone shifted, losing some of its friendliness. Look, you think walking around broke makes you a better person than taking money for something you already did? You think the landlord cares how noble you are when he changes the locks? Eli pictured the notice taped to their door last winter when he had paid rent 3 weeks late, the way the neighbors had watched from their peepholes. I will figure it out, he said. Derek studied him for another second, then exhaled. This is Colin's, not mine. If you want to make some big statement, you can do it yourself. He pushed the envelope across the table toward Eli. Eli did not pick it up. I am not taking it, he said. You can tell him whatever story you want. Tell him I flaked. Tell him I lost the envelope. I do not care. I am not walking out of here with that money. Derek's jaw ticked once. You are making a very strange choice. Feels like the only one that lets me look my kid in the eye, Eli said. Derek's gaze flicked to the front of the envelope. He noticed the word scrawled there for the first time. His mouth curled. You wrote on it, he said. You know that makes it harder to reuse. Good, Eli said. He turned and walked away before Derek could answer. The elevator ride down was quiet. His reflection in the silver door looked washed out. As he stepped out into the street, his phone vibrated. A text from his landlord. Rent is due tomorrow. No more extensions. Do not make me come knocking again. He stared at the message until the letters blurred, then slid the phone back in his pocket. The sky outside had cleared just enough for the sun to push through thin clouds. The light made the wet pavement shine. Across the street, the lake lay flat and gray, a few boats bobbing gently at their moorings. He returned to his shift at the warehouse that afternoon, moving like a man underwater. By the time Saturday came, his body felt made of dull aches. His back complained when he bent to tie his boots. His hands were dry and cracked from cardboard and cold air. June bounced next to him as they walked up the stone steps of the Seattle Central Library. Can we go to the 4th floor this time, she asked. The one with the red room. It looks like being inside a tomato. We are going to the kids section, he said, shifting the canvas tote bag on his shoulder. You know that. We can visit the tomato room on the way out, she decided. That is fair. The library doors whooshed open. Warmth and the faint smell of paper dust and coffee washed over them. The glass and steel of the atrium threw light in strange angles, reflections stacking on reflections. June knew the way without looking. She skipped ahead, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Her ponytail bounced with every step. The children's section was its own world, low shelves, bright rugs patterned with letters and animals, beanbag chairs shaped like frogs and clouds, a mural of mountains and whales wrapped around the bar wall. June made a delighted sound and darted straight to the shelf where the horse books lived. Look, they have a new one, she said, pulling a glossy volume free. A white horse reared on a stormy beach on the cover. This one looks serious. Serious horses, Eli said, very intense. She hugged the book to her chest, already scanning for more. You find your boring grown-up books, she told him. I will find important things. Deal, he said. He watched her for a moment, small and determined, moving along the shelf. Then he turned away, drifting toward the new fiction display like someone walking through a dream. He ran his fingers along spines without seeing the titles. His mind felt oddly blank the way it did after a long shift when his body moved out of habit and his thoughts lagged behind. He rounded the end of a shelf. She was there, not across a candlelit table this time, but between 2 tall rows of novels under white fluorescent light. Her cream-colored sweater stood out against the darker jackets of the books. She held a paperback in one hand, thumb tucked in to keep her place as she read the back cover. Her hair was pulled back into a loose knot today, a few pale strands escaping to brush her neck. She had a small crossbody bag slung across her torso. Her feet rested solidly in ankle boots, no cushion or footrest needed here. In this space without candles and white tablecloths, she seemed at once smaller and more solid. Eli's first instinct was physical. His chest tightened. His heel lifted, ready to pivot away to retreat behind the nearest shelf to disappear before she glanced up. His hand shot out instead, landing lightly on the edge of the bookshelf to steady himself. He stood there, heart thumping in his throat, watching her eyes move across the lines of the book jacket. She did not look up. People drifted past at the ends of the aisles, pushing carts, shushing children. The murmur of distant voices and the soft thud of books being shelved wrapped everything in a low hum. He could have walked over. He could have said her name. He stayed where he was, half hidden behind a display of travel guides, the sharp corner of one cover digging into his side, until June's voice carried across the room. "Daddy, the horse survives the storm," she called. "I have to show you. It is very important." He closed his eyes briefly, then turned his back on the fiction aisle and walked toward the sound of his daughter's voice. He did not talk to her that Saturday. He told himself it was better that way. He had already done enough damage. She did not need him walking up between library shelves like some bad memory that had learned to walk. All afternoon he followed June through the children's section, with half his attention somewhere else. He helped her stack a tower of picture books, laughed when it toppled, nodded when she explained the difference between ponies and horses, as if he had not heard it 5 times already. Every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the adult fiction aisles, toward the corner where he had seen the cream sweater and the pale knot of hair. By the time they left, his neck hurt from not turning his head. That night, after June fell asleep with her face buried in her pillow and her stuffed horse crushed under one arm, he lay awake and stared at the cracks in the ceiling. The ceiling did not blink. His brain would not stop replaying the moment her eyes had lifted at Serafina, the moment she had said, "You are not Colin." He had thought about money when he said yes. He had thought about rent and shoes and read notices. He had not thought far enough ahead to this feeling, this cold thing that sat just beneath his ribs every time he pictured her face. All week that feeling stayed. It followed him along the warehouse aisles. It stood beside him at the sink while he washed dishes. It sat at the small kitchen table while he tried to turn numbers into a budget that did not exist. By Friday night, he knew one thing with the same tired certainty he reserved for gravity and taxes. If he saw her again and walked away a second time, he would never stop remembering it. Saturday morning clouds lay low over the city. The streets were wet, though it had not rained in hours. Eli locked the apartment door, checked that June's jacket was zipped, and led her down the stairs. "Library day," June sang, hopping over a crack in the sidewalk. Library day, best of all the days." "Thought your birthday was the best day," Eli said. "That is a different category," she said, as if this was obvious. They rode the bus this time. He watched raindrops cling to the window as the neighborhood slid past. The envelope-shaped absence in his jacket felt strange, like a missing tooth his tongue kept probing. Inside the Seattle Central Library, the air felt warmer than outside, humming softly with quiet voices and footsteps. June tugged at his sleeve. "Can I go ahead?" "You know the rule," he said. "Kids section only. I meet you there." "I know," she said. "I am not a baby." She darted forward, sneakers squeaking, ponytail flying. He took the slower route up the gentle ramp that spiraled through the building. Glass walls on one side, shelves on the other. His heart picked up a bit with each level. He told himself she might not be here. That was possible. Maybe last week had been a coincidence. He turned into the fiction level. She was there. Same row, different book, different sweater, this one deep green. Her hair down around her shoulders today, softer somehow. She held an open hardcover in one hand, fingertips resting lightly on the page, while her eyes moved. He stopped at the end of the aisle. His palms were damp. He wiped them on his jeans, then made himself move. Her book dipped a fraction as his shadow touched the edge of the page. She looked up. The library light was less forgiving than candlelight. It showed the faint shadows under her eyes, the careful control around her mouth. For a second, neither of them said anything. A cart rattled somewhere behind him. Someone laughed under their breath near the computers. "I know I am probably the last person you want to see," Eli said. Her gaze sharpened. "That is true." He nodded. He had not expected anything else. "My daughter and I come here every Saturday if I can manage it. I did not know you would be here last week. I did not want to ambush you." "You did not want to ambush me," she repeated softly. "Interesting choice of verb considering our history." He shifted his weight, aware of the shelf pressing lightly into his shoulder. "I should have said something. I walked away instead. That was cowardly." "That is on me." "Correct," she said. Her eyes did not leave his face. It felt like standing under a bright light. "I came over today because hiding in the cooking section for an hour felt worse," he said. "I do not need anything from you. I just wanted to say I am sorry. Properly. Not across a table you were trapped at." "You already said you were sorry," she replied. "I know." He took a breath. "The first time it was mixed with trying to excuse myself. I am not doing that now. What I did was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I said yes. I did it anyway. You did not deserve to be part of that." Something flickered in her expression. Not forgiveness? Not yet. Just the briefest hint of surprise. You did not answer my question at dinner, she said. He frowned slightly. Which one? What did you do with the money? Her voice stayed quiet, but there was an edge of curiosity under the words. I gave it back, he said. She blinked once. You brought it back to Colin. To Derek, he said. The guy who set it up. Same difference. You could have kept it, she said. You had already done everything they asked. Why would you return it after the fact? Guilt is cheaper when you do not get paid for it, he said. Her mouth twitched almost, but not quite a smile. That line sounds prepared. I had a lot of time to think, he admitted. She studied him for a long moment. Her gaze dropped briefly to his hands, then to the edge of his shirt where it did not quite sit flat. When she looked back up, some of the frost had thinned. How do I know you are not lying? She asked. You do not, he said. I do not have a receipt for returning terrible decisions. She snorted. It was small, almost silent, but it was there. There was a word written on the envelope when I left it, he added. Just one. I doubt they will forget it. That is the closest thing to proof I can offer. What word? She asked. No, he said. This time the almost smile landed. It touched the corner of her mouth, then retreated. And the reason, she said, your big tragic story. You did not tell it. He understood what she meant. He had felt the words lining up in the restaurant, all the practical reasons he had the numbers and the losses, and the graveyard of bills. I have reasons, he said. They do not change what happened. She tilted her head as if testing that answer for weak spots. Do you always decide to grow a conscience after the fact, she asked. No, he said. Usually I try to have it in advance. Successful are you, she said. Not that night. Their eyes held. He realized he still did not know what her name was beyond the surname the reservation had carried. Tessa, she said suddenly, as if reading his thought. In case you forgot, since you never got to use it. I did not forget, he said. The name had sat in his mind like a weight for days. She flinched just a little at his tone, then covered it with a light shrug. Well, now you have used it, that is something. Tessa, a small voice said from behind Eli's elbow. He turned. For a heartbeat, his stomach dropped before his brain caught up. June stood there, with a book pressed to her chest, cheeks pink from the walk through the building. There were tiny flecks of glitter on her nose, probably from some craft project at school. Her eyes were fixed on the woman beside him, bright with curiosity. You met her already? Tessa asked, eyebrows lifting. June looked between them, sensing a tension she did not understand. You know each other, she said. We have met, Tessa said. June frowned thoughtfully. You are little, she said to Tessa, like me. But I am little because I am 7, and you are little because you stopped growing earlier than other people. That is what my teacher said about her cousin. June, Eli started heat rising in his face. Honey, that is not a polite way to start. Tessa lifted a hand slightly without looking at him. It is fine. She bent at the waist, so her eyes were closer to June's, although she did not have to bend far. Your teacher is mostly right, she said. My body got a different set of instructions. June considered this, then nodded, apparently satisfied. Are you a fairy? She asked. Tessa blinked. A what? A fairy, June repeated. In my books they are small and they have magic, and sometimes they pretend to be regular people. You look like you could have magic. Tessa laughed. It was the same laugh he had heard once at Serafina, when she had been too outraged not to let it out. But this one was softer, less like breaking glass, and more like something loosening. I am not a fairy, she said. Unfortunately. I am just a regular person who stopped at this height. She held a hand up near her shoulder to demonstrate. June leaned in. Do you have any magic at all? I make excellent cookies, Tessa said. That feels a little like magic when you are sad. June's eyes widened. That is serious magic. She is very strict about baking, Eli said aside. June shot him a look, then turned back to Tessa, noticing the book in her hand for the first time. What are you reading? She asked. Tessa held the cover out. Something about people being terrible to each other and trying to fix it, she said. Light reading. That sounds like grown-up stuff, June said. I have a horse in a storm. It is very dramatic. I heard, Tessa said. Her gaze flicked to Eli. Apparently survival is a theme today. Do you want to see? June asked. There are pictures. And the horse is okay, but you are nervous for a while. I like being nervous for a while if it ends. Okay, Tessa said. June brightened. She slid her hand into Tessa's without hesitating. Come on. The kids' area is this way. They have a frog chair that eats you in a nice way. Tessa allowed herself to be pulled a step, then paused. She looked up at Eli. I did not say I forgive you, she said quietly, in case you were tempted to hear that. I did not, he said. You do not owe me that. A small crease appeared between her brows. She seemed both frustrated and reassured by his answer. "I come here most Saturdays," she said, voice still low, "for a book club. We meet upstairs, but I like to get here early." "We try to come every Saturday," he said, "if I do not have an extra shift. So our worlds overlap," she said, "by accident." He nodded. She studied him for a moment longer, then gave the faintest shrug. "I am not saying this changes anything," she said, "but I am also not saying never." He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "That is more than I expected." Again she said low bar. June tugged on her hand. "Come on, Tessa, the frog chair is going to get taken." "I will be there in a second," Tessa said. June huffed, but let go and ran ahead, weaving between a stroller and a cart of reshelved books. Tessa watched her go. Some of the tension dropped from her shoulders. "She is something," she said. "She is the reason I am trying to be less of an idiot," Eli said. "For her sake," Tessa said. He hesitated. "And for mine." She gave him one last look, unreadable, then followed June toward the bright rugs and the frog-shaped beanbag. Eli stayed where he was for a moment, surrounded by shelves and the quiet buzzing life of the library. Then he turned and walked after them, the sound of his boots soft on the carpet. The frog chair did not actually eat anyone, but it tried. June launched herself into its open green mouth and disappeared up to her chin. Tessa stood beside it, arms folded loosely, watching as June wiggled deeper until only the top of her head and the tips of her sneakers were visible. "It has claimed another victim," Tessa said. From the doorway to the children's section, Eli watched them. June's laughter floated up pure and loud. Around them, other kids moved in their own orbits, voices softened by carpet and shelves. "Daddy, help, it is digesting me," June called. "You seem fine," he said. "Does it at least taste good?" "It tastes like old crayons," she answered from inside the chair. "Very chewy." Tessa smiled, the expression unguarded for once. She looked at June, not at Eli. Her hand reached out automatically as June struggled to sit up, fingers closing around the girl's wrist. It was a small thing, the way she braced herself and pulled, the way June leaned on her without hesitation, but it landed in Eli's chest in a way he did not have words for. They ended up in a loose triangle, June sprawled on the frog chair, with her horse in her lap. Tessa perched on the edge of another beanbag, Eli on a low wooden stool that felt one size too small for him. June narrated the storm scene from the horsebook with the urgency of breaking news. "And then the waves are really big and the wind is screaming and everyone thinks the horse will get swept away, but she does not because she is smart. And also the author likes her, I think." "Always good to be liked by the author," Tessa said. June nodded seriously. "Do you like your author?" Tessa blinked. "My what?" "The person writing your life," June said. "In my head, everyone has an author. Sometimes they make bad chapters, though. My author made Mom die, so I am mad at them a little, but maybe they are trying." The air between the three of them shifted. Eli felt his spine stiffen. "June," he said softly. She looked at him, then back at Tessa. "Sorry," she said, but it did not sound very apologetic. Just honest. Tessa studied her for a long second. The noise of the library dimmed in Eli's perception, as if someone had turned a knob and dropped the background sound away. "I do not know about authors," Tessa said finally, "but I know I get to make some choices. I did not choose the body. I did not choose how other people react. I do get to choose who I spend my time with." June considered this. "You choose to spend time with us," she said. "For the moment," Tessa said. Her eyes flicked to Eli and the edge of a smile touched her mouth. "The company is not terrible." June beamed satisfied. That was the first Saturday they all stayed together longer than a few minutes. It did not happen overnight. It happened in layers. Another week, then another. The pattern settled in like a new habit that felt older than it was. Saturday mornings became a ritual. Eli would pack the canvas tote with overdue books, a water bottle, a bag of crackers if they had them. He and June would ride the bus, or on good weeks drive the truck if there was enough gas to justify it. Sometimes Tessa was already there when they arrived, sitting in a low chair with a paperback balanced on her knee. Sometimes she came in later, shaking rain out of her hair, cheeks pink from the walk. Once she appeared with a folded umbrella, patterned with tiny stars that June immediately decided was the most beautiful shield ever. June claimed her the moment she appeared, tugging her toward the craft table, the computer games, the tower of foam blocks. Tessa never seemed to mind. If anything, she seemed grateful for the clarity of a child's world where rules were simple and loyalties direct. While June constructed castles for imaginary horses or made up elaborate games about dragons who liked tea, Eli and Tessa found themselves in the empty spaces around her. On the days when June was deeply focused, coloring within the lines with unusual seriousness, Eli and Tessa would drift a few feet away, never out of sight, but out of immediate earshot. They would lean against a low shelf or sit on the edge of a bench and talk in the careful way of people who had decided not to waste each other's time. He learned that Tessa worked 3 blocks away at a nonprofit office downtown. Her days were full of meetings about ramps and captions and accessible websites. I spend a lot of time reminding people that disabled is not the opposite of capable, she said one morning, stirring cream into a coffee she had smuggled down from the lobby cafe. And that making a space accessible is not charity, it is the bare minimum. Do they listen? He asked. Sometimes. She lifted the cup, blew on it. Sometimes they say all the right words and build a ramp with a 70-degree incline. Then I send them an email with physics equations. He laughed, picturing it. Were you always like this? Annoying, she said. Stubborn. Involved, he said. She tilted her head. No. There was a long stretch where I tried to be as quiet as possible, to take up less space than I already did. That does not work very well when you are built like me. People notice you anyway. At some point I figured if they are going to stare, I might as well give them something useful to look at. A week later, on a rare sunny morning, they sat outside on the library's concrete terrace. June lay on her stomach nearby, legs kicking in the air as she drew bridges in her notebook, long lines over and over connecting blocky islands. Below them, buses hissed at the curb, and the sound glittered faintly in the distance. Tessa twisted a paper coffee cup between her hands. The cardboard squeaked softly. I was the only little person in my town growing up, she said. Every school photo, there I am in the front row, dead center like a mascot. There was this girl, Heather, who liked to pat me on the head, like I was a dog. She thought she was being cute. Did you hit her? June asked, not looking up from her drawing. No, Tessa said. I told her the oil from her hand would make my hair fall out in clumps. Kept a straight face the whole time. She stopped touching me, started telling people I was cursed. That part was less ideal. June giggled. Eli smiled into his coffee. What about the guys, he asked. The question slipped out before he could frame it more carefully. Dating, I mean. Tessa's eyes shifted from the skyline to his face. There are categories, she said. The fetishists, the ones who are a little too excited about my height. The saviors, the ones who want to be seen as the guy who is not shallow, but they are very clear I am their one exception. The embarrassed ones. They like me in private but do not want to be seen with me. And then the occasional normal person who gets exhausted by all of that and goes looking for someone simpler. Simpler, Eli repeated. Less complicated, she said. Less exhausting. Less likely to make them confront anything about themselves. He looked down at his hands, the coffee warming his fingers. Which one was Colin, he asked. The savior, she said without hesitation. At least that is the version his mother wanted him to audition for. Would have looked great in the family newsletter. All that inclusive branding. The breeze lifted a strand of hair against her cheek. She pushed it back. I got tired, she said. 2 years of apps and setups and blind dates that were not blind at all because everyone had Googled me. Every single time I went in wondering what I was being cast as. One day I decided I did not need to audition anymore. So you stopped, he said. So I stopped, she said. Then my friend begged me to try one more. A guy she swore was decent. I almost said no. I said yes because I did not want to hurt her feelings. Her mouth twitched. That worked out impressively well. Eli did not offer a defense. There was not one. On another Saturday, clouds pressed low and heavy against the glass. June fell asleep halfway through a stack of picture books, her cheek resting on a cartoon unicorn. The 2 adults sat near her, voices very quiet. You never talk about her, Tessa said. Who, he asked, even though he knew. The woman you were married to, she said. The one who taught June how to be that blunt without sounding cruel. He watched June's shoulders rise and fall. A lock of hair lay across her forehead. He brushed it back. Her name was Mara, he said. We met when we were 23. She laughed at jokes before the punchline because she could tell where they were going. She cried at commercials about breakfast cereal. She made pancakes that looked like animals on Sundays. Bears, rabbits, very questionable dinosaurs. Tessa smiled, but it was careful. She worked at a florist, he said. Came home smelling like eucalyptus and dirt. Her hands always had green stains on them from the stems. She liked that, said it made her feel useful. The memory rose in his mind in sharp focus, so bright it almost hurt. She started getting headaches when June was 3, he went on, the kind that knock you flat. At first we thought it was stress, or bad sleep. Anyone can get headaches. Then she forgot where she had parked the car one day. in a lot she had been using for years. She laughed it off. I knew something was wrong. It took months to get seen by the right people. Tessa listened without interrupting. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers interlaced tightly. When they finally gave it a name, it came with numbers, he said. Percentages, probabilities, survival curves. We fell off the good side of every graph. Treatment helped, then it did not. The bills kept coming no matter what. So, I worked nights and days, and whatever shifts I could grab to keep the lights on, and then one day there was nothing left to do but sit in a room with a lot of beeping and watch the person you love forget your birthday. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. June was at my parents' when she died, he said. It was spring. The window was open a little. There was this stupid tree outside, some ornamental cherry thing the hospital planted to make the place look less like what it is. It was blooming, pink everywhere. Mara did not even see it. She was looking at me. And then she was not. The library hum filled the pause. Somewhere a child laughed too loud and was gently shushed. How did you tell June? Tessa asked. He swallowed. I told her Mom's body stopped working, but her love did not. That she was somewhere we could not see, like a star. June asked if her mom could still see her dreams. I said yes. Do you believe that? Tessa asked. I do not know, he said, but she needed that answer, so I gave it to her. He rubbed his forehead with his thumb. After Mara died, our insurance ran out. The hospital still sent bills. We lost the house. I lost the job that came with the house. Ended up in the apartment above the laundromat with a 4-year-old who kept asking when Mom was coming home. I wanted to sleep for a year. She needed breakfast and clean socks. Children are stubborn like that, Tessa said quietly. June saved me, he said. Every morning there was someone to make cereal for, someone who needed her shoelaces tied. It did not give me more money. It gave me something to point my body at. For a while they sat without speaking. June shifted in her sleep, mumbling something about a bridge and a dragon. Her pencil rolled off the page and onto the carpet with a small thud. Thank you for telling me, Tessa said finally. He looked at her. Her eyes were shinier than usual, but no tears fell. Not a tragic backstory, she added, just a real one. He let out a short, tired laugh. Feels pretty tragic from the inside. Yes, she said, that is usually how it works. The next Saturday, when he and June walked into the children's section, Tessa was already there. She sat cross-legged on the rug, 2 books in front of her. One was about a girl who talked to trees. The other had a photograph of a girl in a wheelchair on the cover. June dropped to the floor beside her without hesitation. What are we reading? She asked. Options, Tessa said. Trees or wheels? Why not both? June said. Maybe the girl in the chair talks to trees too. Tessa glanced up at Eli as he approached. Something in her gaze had changed. Less distance. Not quite ease, but the beginning of it. He sat down with them. The rug itched through his jeans. June leaned against his shoulder, one hand resting on Tessa's knee as she pointed at the first page. Around them, the quiet murmur of the library went on. Outside, the city shifted and busied itself. Inside this small square of carpet, 3 people bent over the same book, bodies leaning inward as if they had been doing it all their lives. The invitation came on a Thursday, tucked between emails about meeting agendas and a reminder from June's school about picture day. Eli was on his lunch break, sitting in his truck with a ham sandwich that tasted mostly like cold bread when his phone buzzed. From Tessa Lane. Subject Saturday. Text in the body, short and to the point. I have a ridiculous orange cat who needs more people to adore him. Want to come over after the library this weekend? I am walking distance. June can meet Pumpkin. No strings, no ambushes, just cookies. He read it twice, then a third time. The words no strings pulsed a little. He typed back, erased, typed again. Sure, as long as Pumpkin is okay with loud horse facts. Her reply came a minute later. Pumpkin loves drama. You two will get along. On Saturday, June walked out of the library with 3 books in her arms and a 4th tucked under her chin. The sky over Capitol Hill was a pale gray bowl. Wet leaves stuck to the sidewalk. Cars lined the curb, their windshields dotted with rain. Are we going home now? June asked, trying to keep the books from sliding out of her grip. We are making a stop, Eli said. Tessa invited us over. There is a cat involved. A cat, June said, eyes widening. She immediately forgot about the books. A real one. Breathing, I assume, he said. June did a little hop on the spot. Do we have to bring an offering? Do cats like flowers? I think cats like not being chased, he said. You can bring your inside voice. That is a good start. Tessa's building sat on a tree-lined side street, brick and glass with narrow balconies. It was old enough to have character, new enough to have working intercoms. A small brass plaque by the door listed 4 names: Lane was on the third line. Eli pressed the buzzer. There was a crackle, then Tessa's voice. "Yeah, it is us," he said. "Me and June and a lot of books." The lock clicked. Third floor. Elevator to the left. Pumpkin is on high alert. The lobby smelled faintly of laundry soap and someone's strong coffee. The elevator doors were brushed metal smudged at kid height. Inside, June stared at the glowing numbers, then at their reflection in the mirrored wall. "Do you think the cat knows we are coming up?" she whispered. "I think he senses disturbance in the force," Eli said. The hallway on the third floor was surprisingly bright with big windows at each end. The door to Tessa's apartment was painted a soft blue. A small brass 3C sat above the peephole. Beside the door at ankle height, a tiny bell on a spring was mounted to the frame. June poked it. It chimed once gentle and clear. "That is Pumpkin's doorbell," Tessa said as she opened the door. "So, he has fair warning." She stood barefoot on the threshold, jeans and a loose navy t-shirt, hair braided over one shoulder. The apartment light behind her was warm. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Eli said. "This is Sue." June tried to peer around her legs. "Where is he?" Tessa stepped back and swung the door wider. "Come in and find out." The first thing Eli noticed was the light. Two large windows faced the street, letting in a wash of gray daylight that softened everything. The second thing he noticed was that nothing was at standard height. The kitchen counters were a couple of inches lower than usual, but not so low that they looked strange, just right for someone Tessa's height. The cupboards had handles mounted slightly lower too. The light switches were placed where her hand would fall naturally. The coffee table in the living room was shorter than his knees. The sofa sat nearer to the floor. The impression was not of a child's room. Everything was clean, modern, and deliberate. White walls hung with framed prints. A row of succulents on the windowsill, a floor lamp with a long curved stem arcing down, not up. The space felt like it had been claimed piece by piece. June did not clock any of that. Her attention went straight to the orange heap on the back of the couch. Pumpkin blinked once, slow and unimpressed, then rolled to one side so his belly showed. His fur was the color of canned pumpkin, deep orange, with faint stripes, his body round and comfortably heavy. "Oh," June breathed. She set her stack of books down without looking. "He is perfect." Pumpkin watched her approach. When her hand hovered just above his fur, he pushed his head into it with a small gust of purr. "He likes you," Tessa said. "He is magic," June said, reverent. "I can feel it." "She says that about anything with fur," Eli told Tessa quietly. "No," June corrected without turning. "Some animals are just regular." She scratched under Pumpkin's chin and the cat's purr deepened. "This one is enchanted." Tessa's mouth curved. High praise. She moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, pulling a mixing bowl and bag of chocolate chips from a cabinet. Eli watched her fingers find each thing without searching. He noticed that the cabinet doors swung inward slowly, some kind of soft, close hinge that would not slam into her at face height. "You want help with anything?" he asked. "Can you reach the flower?" she said, nodding toward the top shelf of the pantry. "I was ambitious when I reorganized, forgot my wings." He reached up and pulled the flower down. Their hands brushed briefly as she took the bag. Her fingers were cool, dusted at the tips with sugar from some earlier project. "Thank you," she said. "Division of labor," he answered. "You handle the magic, I handle the tall." She gave him a look that was half amusement, half something more complicated. While she measured and stirred, June gave Pumpkin a tour of the apartment, narrating every detail at a running whisper, as if the cat needed context. "This is your couch. It is very soft. That is your scratching post. But I think you already know, because look at those marks. That is the window. And outside the window is the world, which is big, but you are safe because you have Tessa. Also, you have a bell. I do not have a bell, which seems unfair." Pumpkin followed at his own pace-tail, swaying occasionally, stopping to rub his whiskers against a chair leg, as if to mark it again just in case. "You built this out," Eli said when June wandered off into the hallway, and Tessa had a moment to breathe. He gestured vaguely around them. "The counters, the switches. It fits you." "That was the goal," she said. "When I moved in, the kitchen was standard height. My chin was basically in the sink. The cabinets might as well have been on the moon. I hired a contractor, explained what I needed. He tried to sell me on a step stool." "How did that go?" Eli asked. "I found a different contractor," she said. He smiled. "People here accessible and picture metal rails and ugly ramps bolted onto old buildings," she said, scraping dough from the side of the bowl. "Hospital vibes, white vinyl. They do not understand it can be comfortable and pretty, that it can feel like a home, not a retrofit." "It feels like yours," he said. She glanced at him, eyes quick. That is the idea. The oven preheated with a soft electronic beep. The smell of butter and sugar crept into the air as the first tray went in. June appeared at the archway to the hall, Pumpkin tucked under one arm like a misshapen orange football. The cat dangled there, calmly resigned. Pumpkin showed me his litter box, she announced. We are very close now. That is a sign of trust, Tessa said. Eli eyed the cat. You sure he is not just too lazy to protest? He believes in energy conservation, Tessa said. He is a scientist at heart. They ate the first batch of cookies at the small dining table pushed up near the windows. The tops were crisp at the edges and soft in the center, chocolate still glossy and warm. June got crumbs all over her shirt and did not seem to notice. These are better than the store ones, she said through a mouthful. Low bar, Eli said. The store ones taste like cardboard pretending to be happy. These taste like somebody loves you, June said. Even if you are messy. There was a brief silence that held more than the words themselves. Eli felt it. From the corner of his eye, he saw Tessa react to it too. He cleared his throat. Remember to chew, he said. Breathing is still important. June rolled her eyes but chewed. Later, when June and Pumpkin had collapsed together on the couch, both half dozing, Eli and Tessa ended up in the kitchen again with mugs of tea. Steam curled up into the space between them. From the living room came the faint sound of June talking in the slow, dreamy rhythm she used when she was almost asleep. I need to tell you something, Tessa said. Her voice had shifted. The lightness from earlier had thinned. Eli set his mug down. Okay, he said. She rested both hands on the edge of the counter. For the first time since he had walked in, she looked a little unsure of the space she was in. You know me as Tessa Lane, she said. That is the name on my email, my work badge, the buzzer downstairs. He nodded. It is not the one I was born with, she said. People change names. He knew that. It did not usually sound this heavy. What was it, he asked, keeping his voice level. Langford, she said. Tessa Langford. The last name stirred something in his head, a memory of logos on trucks' articles he had scanned in waiting rooms. Like the shipping company, he said slowly. Northbridge. Langford as in Charles Langford. As in my father, she said. Silence opened between them wide and clean. Eli could see the Northbridge logo in his mind now, blue and white on the side of containers that rolled through the warehouse yard. He had loaded boxes onto pallets with that name stamped down the sides. He looked around the apartment again, seeing it through a slightly different lens. The careful design, the custom counters, the big windows. I changed it when I was 23, she said. Moved out, got my own apartment, started over. I wanted people to meet me before they met the balance sheet. Turns out that is harder to do when your last name is literally on the side of half the trucks on the interstate. So you became Lance, he said. Shorter, she said. Less loaded. Easier to spell. She tried to smile. It did not hold. I have a trust fund, she said. I do not touch it unless I have no other choice. I work because I like it and because it keeps me sane. I live here because I chose this place, not because it was handed to me with a bow. That matters to me. He took that in piece by piece. I kept it from you at first, because it is always the same, she went on. People act normal until they find out my dad is Charles Langford. Then their eyes change. They get careful, or greedy, or weirdly grateful. They start seeing numbers instead of me. Her fingers tightened on the counter. Her knuckles were pale. I liked that you did not know, she said. At the library, at Serafina even. You were an absolute mess of a human, but you were not calculating a net worth. You were just bad at decisions. That was almost refreshing. His first instinct was to apologize again. For Serafina, for being poor, for overhearing truck logos on bad days. He swallowed it. Why tell me now, he asked. Because you are here, she said simply. Because my cat likes your kid. Because my apartment has your fingerprints on the flower bag. If we are going to share space even for afternoons, I do not want this hanging between us like a trap door. He let his gaze rest on her face. The worry there was not subtle. I grew up in a house where everything was tall, she said softly. Ceilings, expectations, check amounts. There were always people around because of what my father could do for them, what he might give them. When I started dating, I stopped knowing where I ended, and his money began in people's heads. It does things to you, never being sure how much of you is actually you. That sounds exhausting, he said. It is, she said. So, I moved out. Changed my name. Built a life where I could pretend to be just another person on the bus. I still get the Langford package when people find out. Gratitude, suspicion, flattery, offers. None of it feels like me. And now you have to wonder if I am any different, he said. She held his gaze. Yes. They stood there for a long moment, the hum of the fridge loud in the quiet. I grew up nowhere near that world, he said finally. My dad sold tires. My mom taught third grade. Money was something that leaked out of the house gradually. The only time Langford came up was on the side of trucks. It never felt like it had anything to do with me. He took a breath. I care that you have stubborn contractors, he said. That you bake cookies when you are nervous. That you let my kid talk about authors and dragons without laughing at her. The fact that someone once put your last name on an annual report is not in the top 10. That is a nice sentence, she said. People say nice sentences a lot when money is in the room. I cannot prove anything with words, he said. You do not know me well enough yet to believe them. All I can do is keep showing up and not ask what your dad's stock price is. Her mouth twitched. You know about stock prices. I know they are a thing, he said. I do not own any. She looked down into her mug of tea, then back up at him. Her eyes were bright. Do you ever feel like there is a bridge between the person you are and the person people think you are? She asked. And you are always stuck in the middle trying to shout across the gap. All the time, he said, I am the broke guy with the sad story. You are the rich girl with the unusual body. Somewhere between those labels actual people exist. The corners of her mouth lifted. All right, she said quietly. We can stand on the bridge for a while and see what happens. He nodded. From the couch, June's sleepy voice drifted into the kitchen. Daddy likes you, Pumpkin, she murmured, but he likes Tessa more. Pumpkin answered with a rusty purr. Tessa laughed once, quick and startled. Some of the tension rolled off her shoulders. She catches everything she said. She always has, he said. They finished their tea in companionable quiet. The apartment warm around them, and the smell of cookies still hanging in the air. A week after the Pumpkin visit, they were back at their usual corner in the children's section, surrounded by scattered crayons and the remains of a unicorn coloring page. June held out 2 markers, frowning in concentration. Does a bridge feel more like blue or gray, she asked. Depends on the day, Eli said. Gray when it rains, Tessa added. Blue when you are not paying attention. June nodded, apparently satisfied, and chose blue. She pressed the marker hard enough that the paper warped. Eli watched her for a moment, then checked his phone. The bank app screen stared back numbers that never seemed to climb above a certain line. You ever think about doing something else, Tessa asked. He glanced up. Like what? Other than lifting boxes in a warehouse that smells like diesel and dust, she said. You talk about building things like someone who misses it. He hesitated. I used to work carpentry, he said, before Mara got sick. Small stuff. Framing, remodeling jobs. Then we lost the house that came with the job and everything crashed together. The warehouse was what I could get fast. You liked the carpentry, she said. Liked seeing something stand when you were done, he said. A deck, a wall, a set of stairs. You can point and say, I did that. The warehouse, you move things until someone tells you to move different things. The piles are never yours. She nodded, thoughtful. My friend Nora runs a construction outfit, she said. Adaptive spaces mostly. Houses, offices, schools. She is always complaining that she cannot find project managers who understand both the materials and the people using them. He shrugged, trying to keep the spike of interest from showing too obviously. I have only managed chaos and overdue bills lately, he said. Chaos management is a transferable skill, she said. You still know what a load-bearing wall looks like. Last I checked, he said. She watched him for a second. If you want, I can mention your name, she said. She might be hiring. I am not promising anything. I hate playing fairy godmother. He shifted on the small wooden bench. You do not have to do that. I know, she said. That is what makes it a real offer. He looked away toward June, who was now adding little stick figure horses along the edge of the paper. His chest felt tight again, but this time from something closer to hope than dread. You can give her my number, he said. If she calls, I will try not to scare her off. I will tell her you already survived an interview with my cat, Tessa said. That is worth a few points. Nora emailed 2 days later. Hi, Eli. Tessa speaks highly of you, and I trust her taste in humans. Heard you have construction experience and are currently being wasted on forklifts. New project starting next month. Might need another set of hands. Can you come by the office Wednesday for a conversation? He read it 6 times, then checked the sender's domain twice. It was real. He replied yes before he could talk himself out of it. The office was in a converted warehouse near the water, all exposed brick and big windows. Inside, there were long tables instead of cubicles, rolls of blueprints pinned to the walls, potted plants in mismatched containers. A woman in her 40s with short silver hair and a pencil behind one ear met him at the door. You must be Eli, she said. I am Nora. Tessa tells me you know which end of a hammer to hold. I think so, he said. She narrowed her eyes in mock suspicion. She also tells me you can do basic math, show up on time, and own your mistakes. I told her I do not believe in unicorns. They sat at a table with 2 chairs and a stack of permit applications between them. The interview felt less like an interrogation and more like a long, practical conversation. She asked about his years in carpentry specifics, about framing tolerances, what he would do if a ramp spec came back steeper than code allowed. He answered as best he could, drawing on muscle memory and old jobs. When he did not know something, he said so. Nora watched him carefully. Sometimes she nodded. Sometimes she corrected a term, or added a detail testing whether he tried to bluff his way through it. He did not. At one point, she leaned back and crossed her arms. Tessa told me you have a kid, she said. June, he said, 7, full-time. This job is not 9 to 5, Nora said. There are early mornings, occasional late afternoons, but I do not want people living at the site. I have seen too many contractors dissolve their families in the name of hustle. It is not impressive. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. I cannot do nights, he said. I have been doing them at the warehouse. It is burning everything down slowly. We do days, she said. You need to be reachable, and you need to communicate. If your kid gets sick, you call me, we adjust. I prefer honest chaos to silent implosions. I can do honest chaos, he said. She studied him a second longer, then nodded once, like someone finishing an internal calculation. All right, she said. This is how it looks. Starting pay is better than whatever you are making now. It will not make you rich, but it will let you stop flinching at the mailbox. We give benefits after 90 days. I yell when necessary, but I do not throw things. We are building 3 small accessible homes over the next year, starting in Rainier Valley. You would be a junior project manager shadowing one of my seniors until I am sure you will not put stairs where I asked for a ramp. He realized his hands were clenched on his knees. He forced them to relax. You are offering me the job, he asked, just to be sure he had not misunderstood. If you want it, she said. I am not in the habit of wasting time. Besides, anyone Tessa vouches for is either decent or very good at fooling her, and fooling her takes effort I respect. He almost laughed, but it came out as a kind of choked sound. I want it, he said. They shook hands. Her grip was firm and dry. When he stepped outside, the sky over the water had cleared to a pale blue. There were still clouds at the edges, but the kind that let light through. He walked back to the truck in a daze, fingers brushing the phone in his pocket. He did not text Tessa right away. He needed a minute to believe it himself. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper and a pen and a sense of cautious relief. For the first time in months, the numbers did not feel like a trap. He could see rent as something other than a threat. He circled a date 3 months out, the day the benefits would kick in, then crossed the circle out because it made him nervous to mark things that might not happen. June sat across from him in her pajamas, feet swinging above the floor, drawing on the back of an envelope. Is that a dragon, he asked. A bridge, she said, obviously. Obviously, he echoed. The dragon lives under it, though, she added, in case anyone needs trouble. When the first paycheck from Nora's company hit his account, it felt unreal. The amount was not astronomical, but it was stable and bigger than the warehouse checks. He paid rent without holding his breath. He paid the electric bill before the second notice arrived. Then he took June to a shoe store that did not smell like plastic and desperation. The salesperson knelt to measure her foot on a little metal device. June watched fascinated as the slider moved. You have been squeezing a 9 into a 7, the woman said gently, looking up at Eli. She grows fast, he said, his ears burned. We will get her something with room to grow, the woman said, within reason, so she does not trip over her own feet. June tried on a pair of sneakers with blue stripes, then a pair with small silver stars along the sides. When she walked, the light caught them. These feel like jumping shoes, she said, bouncing on her toes. I can probably get to Space with these. Space can wait until after we pay, Eli said. He knelt to tie the lace's fingers, working through the simple, familiar motions. For once the fabric was not thin, the rubber knot cracked. The knot held neatly when he pulled it tight. He double knotted out of habit. June looked down at him, her face suddenly serious. Are we rich now, she asked. He sat back on his heels. No, he said, we are not rich. She thought about that. Are we still poor? We are not falling through the floor, he said. We have what we need today. That is pretty good. She seemed to weigh the answer, then nodded. Being okay is very good, she said. Better than not okay. He swallowed against the lump in his throat. Yeah, he said. It is. On the way home, June insisted on wearing the new shoes out of the store. She carried her old pair in a paper bag, toes still taped, soles worn smooth. At the apartment, she lined the old shoes on the windowsill side by side. "They can rest," she said. "They worked hard." He turned away for a second, pretending to adjust something on the counter. Work at Nora's company was different from the warehouse in every way. The days were still long, but they had shape. He learned to read plans again, to juggle subcontractors and timelines, to anticipate where a doorway needed to be wider, where a countertop needed to be lower. Some mornings, he stood on a muddy lot in a hard hat, the smell of wet lumber and concrete dust in the air, and felt his shoulders drop in a way they had not in years. In the evenings, he and June no longer fell into bed out of sheer exhaustion. There was time for real dinners, not just bowls of cereal. On good nights, he had energy left to read 3 chapters instead of 1. Tessa moved through this new rhythm like someone who had always been part of it. She did not talk about the job much beyond asking how the sites were going, but pieces of her were there anyway. The way she asked if the door thresholds were flush. The way she sent him a link to an article on universal design with the note, "Thought you might find this useful, not a lecture, promise." One evening after he had dropped June off at a friend's birthday party, he stopped by Tessa's place with a 6-pack of decent beer. "You got me hired," he said when she opened the door. She stepped back to let him in. "I introduced you," she said. "You got hired. Nora does not do favors. She barely does holidays." He set the bottles on the counter. "If you had not said my name, I would still be moving boxes under flickering lights," he said. She closed the fridge door and leaned against it. "Do you want me to say you are welcome?" she asked. "I want you to know I know what you did," he said, "and that I am grateful, even if I am also suspicious of good things." Her eyes softened. "Most of the men who have chased my last name wanted something specific," she said. "Status, access, and investment. You are the first to fight taking what my network can give." "I am still taking it," he said, "just complaining as I go." "Progress," she said. They smiled at each other over the small kitchen. Later that night, after Pumpkin had settled on Eli's lap and gone heavy with sleep, June sat cross-legged on the rug and watched them. "You know she likes you, right?" she said out of nowhere. Eli looked down. "Pumpkin weighs a ton, I noticed." "I meant," Tessa, June said. "She gets pink when you say nice things, and she laughs at your jokes even when they only make sense in your head. And when you are not looking, she looks at you like the princess looks at the prince in my book, only less crown, more flannel." Tessa choked on her tea. Eli felt heat crawl up his neck. "June," he said. "I am just saying what I see," she replied. "It is data." Tessa wiped her mouth and set her cup down very carefully. "You have a very observant child," she said. "I know," he said. "So, do you like her?" June asked, as if this were a simple yes or no question about snacks. Eli opened his mouth, then closed it. He thought of Tessa in the library light. Tessa with flour on her knuckles. Tessa's voice when she talked about ramps and thresholds. Tessa's hand steady on June's wrist, pulling her out of the frog chair. "Yes," he said finally, "I like her." June's face lit up, as if someone had switched on a lamp inside it. "Good," she said. "I hate when one person likes someone and the other person is confused. It makes the story messy." "Real life is messy," Tessa said. June shrugged. "That is why it is interesting." Pumpkin purred louder as if he agreed. The room felt warm. The table, the couch, the low counters, the shoes by the door, the cat on his lap, the child on the floor, the woman leaning against the counter. None of it was extravagant. All of it felt fragile and solid, at the same time like something carefully built that might actually hold. Autumn came in quietly. One week the trees along 4th Avenue were a flat, uninteresting green. The next they were doing their best impression of a fireworks display. Gold and orange leaves clung to branches and scattered across sidewalks, slick when it rained, crisp when it did not. On a Saturday morning, Eli and June walked up the library steps through a swirl of falling leaves. June tried to catch them in both hands, laughing when they slipped away. "It is like the trees are emptying their pockets," she said. "They carried all this around all summer." "Maybe they finally got tired," Eli said. "You can put things down even if you still love them," she said. "My teacher said that about books, but I think it is bigger." He glanced down at her. Sometimes her sentences landed harder than she knew. Inside the library had the warm, humming feel of a place people chose to be. Coats dripped by the door. Kids squealed in sudden bursts before being gently shushed. Somewhere above them, a printer whirred. Tessa sat in their usual corner of the children's section, a book in her lap, one leg tucked under her. She wore a soft gray sweater and dark jeans, her hair up in a knot that looked like it might fall apart at any second, and never did. Pumpkin was not here, but something about the way she occupied the space felt like she had brought a bit of home with her anyway. June spotted her and sped up. "Tessa," she called, holding her horsebook aloft like an offering. There is a new one. It has a foal and a river and probably danger. Good morning, Tessa said, closing her own book. You brought drama. Excellent. June plopped down beside her and began a rapid summary of the previous volume in the series. Tessa listened with full attention, asking questions at the right moments, as if this story mattered as much as any report in her inbox. Eli took the stool across from them. The rug squished slightly under his boots. June's words blurred into background after a few minutes, her voice a steady stream of plot points and horse feelings. Eli found his gaze drifting. Tessa's hands moved when she spoke, fingers sketching half shapes in the air. She pushed her glasses up with the back of one knuckle. When June reached for the book, Tessa shifted it automatically within easier reach. She navigated those tiny adjustments without thinking on the level of breathing. He had been watching without realizing it. She caught him. Her eyes met his over the top of June's head. Something wordless moved between them, familiar now, not comfortable exactly, but less sharp. What she asked. Nothing, he said. You are staring at my face, she said. It is either very interesting or I have something on it. June looked up alarmed. You do not, she said. I checked. Tessa huffed out a laugh. That is a relief. Eli felt heat move up his neck. He cleared his throat. I was just thinking, he said, about the first time I saw you in that dress at Serafina. You seemed untouchable. She raised an eyebrow. Untouchable, she repeated. That is a new one. In a good way, he said, like you belong there, and I did not. And now she asked, You still belong, he said. I am just less sure I do not. Her gaze softened the smallest bit. Progress, she said. June watched them both, eyes narrow, mind clearly taking notes. Eventually, the horses ran out of immediate peril, and June's voice slowed. The child sagged back into the frog chair book, still open in front of her. I am going to rest my eyes, she announced. Not my ears, in case anything important happens. Always a risk, Tessa said. Within minutes, June's lashes lay against her cheeks. The book slid down onto her stomach. Her hand stayed loosely fisted in one corner of the page. They sat in the quiet that followed the background noise of the library wrapping around them. Eli shifted to the edge of his stool. His heart was hammering hard enough that he could feel it in his throat. I need to tell you something, he said. That is becoming a theme with you, Tessa answered. He almost smiled. This one is not about my past, he said. It is about right now. She waited alert in a way that made his mouth go dry. I have been practicing this in the mirror, he said. It goes better there. June mentioned your rehearsals, she said. She described them as very intense. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. She was still there, clear and steady. Okay, he said. I like you. Her eyebrows lifted in exaggerated surprise. We have established that, she said. No, he said. I mean, I like you. Not just library Saturdays. Not just co-parenting my child's obsession with horses. I like you. She went still. The noise of the room seemed to recede another notch. He kept going before courage could leak out. When you walk into a room, I pay attention without meaning to, he said. I think about what you might say when something annoys you. I hear your voice in my head when I am on site and see a doorway that is too narrow. I find excuses to text you pictures of crooked ramps. That feels like more than a crush. A small smile tugged at her mouth. It is a good collection, the crooked ramps, she said. Very upsetting. He huffed out a breath. I do not know what to call it, he said. I just know that being around you makes everything else feel a little less heavy. And when you are not there, I notice. She watched his face as if measuring each word for weight. I also know you have every reason to be cautious, he said. With me. With anyone. So, I am not asking for a label. I am just telling you where I am standing. He stopped. His hands were damp. He forced them to stay open on his knees instead of clawing at his jeans. For a moment, she said nothing. Her gaze dropped to the frog chair where June had turned onto her side and tucked her hands under her cheek. Poppy told me you say my name in your sleep, Tessa said finally. He stared. She what? I stayed over that night. You both got the flu, she reminded him. She brushed her teeth, climbed into bed, and informed me that you mutter my name sometimes while you are sleeping. She was very matter-of-fact about it. He groaned quietly. I am going to have a serious talk with that kid about privacy. Do not, Tessa said. It was useful information. He frowned. In what way? It made it less surprising to hear you say all this out loud, she said. She shifted closer on her own seat, not enough to touch enough that he could see the tiny gold flecks in her irises. I like you too, she said, in a way that is not convenient, in a way that scares me. I like that you return that envelope. I like that you tie your kid's shoes as if it is important. I like that you go quiet when you are thinking, instead of filling silence, just to fill it. His chest felt too small. Okay, he said. Okay, she exhaled slowly, a small unsteady sound. I have been waiting for you to say something. I told myself if you did not, I would, eventually. Maybe when we both turned 80. A laugh escaped him, surprised and a little wild. So, he said, what do we do with this? We do not announce it to every person we know, she said. We do not script an entire future. We start by not pretending it is not happening. He nodded. I can do that. She glanced toward the frog chair. And we remember there is a third person in this triangle who has opinions, she added. As if on cue, June shifted and cracked one eyelid open. I am a square, not a triangle, she mumbled. There is also Pumpkin. Her eyes slid closed again. The hint of a smile stayed. Tessa covered her mouth to keep a laugh from escaping too loud. Eli felt something inside him unclench. His hand moved almost without conscious thought. He reached across the space between them, palm up, fingers relaxed. For a second he wondered if he had misread everything. Tessa looked down at his hand. Then she placed her own in it. Her fingers were warm, smaller than his, calloused in a few places from pens and kitchen work and cane strikes on stubborn stairs. The fit felt obvious, as if this had been the intended shape all along. They sat like that for a while, hand in hand, June sleeping beside them, library light spilling across the floor. Later in Tessa's kitchen with Pumpkin weaving between their ankles and June making a peanut butter sandwich that was mostly peanut butter, the conversation shifted. My father asked about you, Tessa said, rinsing a mug and setting it on the rack. Eli tensed. He had known this would come eventually in the abstract. It was different hearing it in her small, familiar kitchen, where his jacket hung on the back of a chair and his daughter was humming to herself. What did you tell him, he asked? That you exist, she said. That you are not a project. That you have a child who could probably talk her way into the Pentagon if she really wanted to. Nice first impression, he said. I did not tell him about Serafina, she said. Yet. He swallowed. That is your story to tell, he said. It is ours, she said quietly, but I will handle the first round. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her ankles. The hem of her jeans brushed the top of her bare feet. He wants to meet you, she said. He framed it as a dinner. I heard all the subtext. Eli pulled out a chair and sat, partly because it felt respectful, partly because his legs had gone a little weak. Does he invite all your friends to dinner, he asked. Only the ones who make my voice change when I talk about them, she said. He tried to find somewhere to rest his eyes that was not her face. The toaster, the plant in the corner, the magnet shaped like a lemon on the fridge. What do you want, he asked. Her fingers drummed lightly on the countertop. I want you to meet him, she said. Not because I need his permission. I learned a long time ago that living for that will kill me, but because he is a huge part of my life, and if you are going to be in my life in this way, you should know what you are dealing with. You think he will like me? Eli asked, aiming for light, not quite hitting it. I think he will interrogate you, she said, then decide if you are worth being decent to. Comforting, he said. She shrugged. He has reasons. People have used him and me enough times that suspicion feels like common sense to him. He let that settle. When he asked, next Saturday, she said, late afternoon, he is making dinner. That is his way of pretending this is casual. It is not. June slid a plate onto the table, a peanut butter sandwich cut into 4 triangles, not quite equal. Who is making dinner, she asked. Tessa's dad, Eli said. They want us to visit. June's eyes gleamed. Do they have a cat, she asked. They have a housekeeper with allergies, Tessa said. So no. But there is a very serious piano and more chairs than any one person needs. Can I go, June asked. Eli looked at Tessa. Tessa shook her head almost imperceptibly. Not the first time, she said. Let me see how it feels. Then we bring in the chaos agent. If I cannot go, you have to bring me back data, June said. What he smells like, what kind of shoes he wears, if his kitchen is taller than this one. I will take notes, Eli said. June seemed satisfied with that. She picked up a sandwich triangle and took a bite large enough to leave peanut butter on both cheeks. Tessa wiped it away with the corner of a napkin. Eli watched her. Watched the easy way she moved around his child now, as if some unspoken barrier had shifted. You can say no, she said quietly to him a few minutes later, when June wandered off to coax Pumpkin into a cardboard box. To meeting my father, I will not hold it against you. He is a lot. The house is a lot. The whole thing is designed to make people feel small, which I find extra hilarious given my situation. I already feel small most days, Eli said. I am used to it. That is not a requirement, she said. He thought of the bridge again, not a real one this time, but the one that kept appearing in June's drawings. The arc between who he used to be, who he was trying to be, and where Tessa stood. I want to go, he said. He is your family. You and June are mine. That feels like information we all need. Her expression changed at that. Something open and startled and pleased flashed across it, gone quickly, but not denied. Okay, she said. She reached out almost absently and tugged at his shoelace where it had come loose, tightening the knot. The contact was brief, practical. Still, it sent a small shock through him. Cannot have you tripping over yourself in front of my father, she said. He would never let us live it down. He looked down at his securely tied shoe, then back up at her. We, he repeated. She smiled. We, she said. The Langford house did not have an address so much as a presence. Eli steered the Honda through a set of iron gates in Medina tires, crunching softly on the gravel drive. Old trees flanked the path, trunks thick and moss-lined branches knit overhead. The house appeared slowly pale stone, and long windows, the kind of place that looked like it might have opinions. Beside him, Tessa sat with her hands folded around her phone. She wore dark slacks and a soft cream blouse, boots polished. Her braid had been traded for a smooth twist at the back of her head. Breathing is still allowed, he said. I will get back to you on that, she replied. June was at a classmate's birthday party, armed with a gift bag and strict instructions not to feed cake to the host's dog. Eli was grateful. He was not sure he could handle both his daughter's curiosity and this house in one afternoon. He parked where Tessa pointed, just short of the front steps. The facade rose above them, clean lines and symmetrical windows. 2 big stone planters flanked the door, each holding a clipped shrub shaped into a perfect sphere. This is a lot of shrub for one man, Eli said under his breath. Tessa's mouth twitched. He likes neat edges, she said, of things he can control. The front door opened before they could ring the bell. A man in his early 60s stood framed in the doorway. He wore a navy sweater and dark jeans, apron strings visible at his back, as if he had been pulled away from a stove. His hair was mostly silver, his posture straight. Tess, he said. His face changed in a way Eli recognized, a sudden softening around the eyes that had nothing to do with money or status. She stepped forward. Hi, Dad. He leaned down so she could kiss his cheek. His hand rested on her shoulder for a second longer than necessary, a small anchor. Then his gaze shifted to Eli. You must be Eli, he said. He offered his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. I am Charles. Thank you for having me, Eli said. Come in, Charles said. I promise the house looks worse from the outside. Inside it was quieter than he expected. There was no bustle of staff, no parade of people, just high ceilings, polished wood floors, and the faint smell of roasted garlic drifting in from somewhere deeper in the house. Sunlight angled through tall windows, falling in clean stripes on the rugs. Eli's boots squeaked faintly on the polished surface. He wished briefly for quieter shoes. Charles led them toward a wide, bright kitchen. Stainless steel gleamed. A pot simmered on the stove, steam curling up. A baking sheet with sliced bread sat ready beside a bowl of olive oil. You cooked, Tessa said, genuine surprise in her voice. Some of it, he said. Do not let the apron fool you. The dessert is beyond my skill set. We will credit Sophia for that. So you did conscript someone, she said. I am not a complete fraud, he answered. The way they traded lines told Eli this was familiar ground for them. A little formal, a little teasing, like two people who knew the shape of each other's defenses and chose not to push too hard. They ate at a long table in a dining room, with floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the lawn and Lake Washington beyond. Boats cut slow lines across the gray water. The food was simple but perfect. Tomato soup that tasted like late summer grilled salmon with lemon-crusty bread. For a while, conversation stayed on neutral topics. Nora's construction company, June's fascination with horses and dragon bridges, the logistics of running a shipping empire in a world of supply chain snarls. You work nights at the warehouse now? Is that right? Charles asked at one point. Not anymore, Eli said. Nora hired me. I started last month. Charles's eyebrows rose. She does not bring people on lightly, he said. That speaks well of you. Tessa made the introduction, Eli said. I am trying not to embarrass her. That is my job, Charles said. I have tenure. Tessa rolled her eyes, but her shoulders dropped a little. When the plates were cleared and coffee poured, the conversation shifted. Tess tells me you are raising your daughter on your own, Charles said. Yes, Eli said. Her mom passed away when she was 4. I am sorry, Charles said, and for once the words did not sound like a formality. I cannot imagine that. Eli nodded. He let the steam from his coffee fog his glasses for a moment before blinking it away. He could have left it there. He could have stayed in the safer parts of the story, the ones that made him look like a man doing his best in a bad situation. The other part pressed against him. Serafina. $600. A black dress and the flicker of candlelight. I should tell you something, he heard himself say. Tessa's hand resting on the table near his went very still. Charles's gaze sharpened. "All right," he said. "I like when people volunteer information. Saves time. The night I met your daughter Eli began, I was not supposed to be myself." He felt Tessa draw in a breath, but she did not speak. At Serafina, Eli went on. "Your friend's son did not want to go. He paid a friend of his to find someone to go in his place. Someone who would make the evening bad enough that Tessa would not want to do that kind of favor again. I was that someone." The dining room seemed to shrink. The sound of the clock on the far wall ticked into the spaces his words left. Charles set his coffee cup down very carefully. "You took money," he said slowly, "to make my daughter's night unpleasant." "I did," Eli said. His mouth felt dry. "I told myself I was only going to be boring, awkward, forgettable, that it was less cruel than a no-show." He forced himself to meet Charles's eyes. "It was still wrong," he said. "I knew it then. I know it more now. She figured it out the second she saw me, which she had every right to do. I watched her walk out of that room, and I have not stopped thinking about it since." Tessa looked down at her hands clenched around the napkin in her lap. "I returned the money the next morning," Eli said, "to the man who arranged it. It did not erase anything. I did it anyway. Then I ran into her again at the library. Several times, actually. The rest you probably know in the outline." Charles remained silent long enough that Eli could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the next room. "You chose to tell me this now," Charles said finally. "Yes," Eli said. "Why?" Charles asked. "Because if I did not," Eli said, "you would be shaking my hand under false pretenses. You would be inviting a man into your daughter's life who was still hiding the worst thing he had done to her. That felt worse than you hearing it and deciding I am not worth the trouble." Charles leaned back slightly. His eyes flicked to Tessa. "And you," he asked her, "you knew all this." "I was there," she said. Her voice was steady. "I watched him sit down. I watched him leave. I watched what he did after." "And you still invited him here?" Charles said. "Yes," she said. Charles looked back at Eli. For a moment, something hard crossed his face. A brief flash of old anger, maybe at every man who had ever treated his daughter as an experiment. "You have made some spectacularly bad choices," he said. "Yes," Eli said quietly, "I have. Most men who want something from me highlight their best days and bury the rest," Charles said. "You walked into my house and led with your worst, not a usual strategy." "It seemed fair," Eli said. Charles's gaze was unwavering. "Are you after my money?" he asked. "No," Eli said. "Connections," Charles said. "My name on a reference, a leg up a better seat at someone else's table." "No," Eli said again. "Then what exactly are you after?" Charles asked. Eli thought of June drawing bridges at the kitchen table, of Tessa tying his shoelace, of the way he slept now less like falling into a pit and more like lying down in a room that would still be there in the morning. "I am after a life that does not feel like a constant apology," he said. "I am after raising my daughter in a way that lets her be as honest as she already is without crushing her. I am after showing up for your daughter in a way that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with who she actually is." Another silence, shorter this time. Charles's expression shifted, the edges of his mouth softening. "Tess told me you were honest," he said. "I did not realize she meant pathologically." "That seems accurate," Tessa murmured. Charles looked at her again. "Do you trust him?" he asked. She met her father's gaze head-on. "Yes," she said. He nodded once as if some internal ledger had just been balanced. "Then that is more important than whether I do," he said. "But for what it is worth, I am inclined to give you a chance." Eli let out a breath he had not meant to hold. "Thank you," he said. "This does not mean I will not be watching," Charles added. "She is my daughter. I will always be watching." "I would worry if you were not," Eli said. Charles's mouth twitched. Good answer. The rest of the afternoon felt less like a test and more like a cautious new arrangement. Charles told a story about Tessa as a child, dragging a kitchen chair across the floor to reach the piano keys, refusing help. "Independent from the start," he said. Stubborn, Tessa corrected. "Same thing in this family," he replied. When Eli and Tessa finally walked back down the front steps toward the Honda, the sun hung low over the lake. The air had that particular chill that announced winter without fanfare. They climbed into the car. For a while, neither of them spoke. The engine hummed, gravel crunched. "Your hands are shaking," Tessa said. He looked down. "Adrenaline," he said, and the salmon had a lot of feelings. She snorted a small burst of genuine amusement. "You did not have to tell him," she said after a moment, "about Serafina. He would have liked you just fine without that part." "He needed to know," Eli said. "If he only liked the edited version, it would not mean much." They drove in silence for a few minutes more. The road curved along the water streetlights, clicking on one by one. In the distance, the span of the bridge to Seattle rose, its lines dark against the fading sky. "You keep doing that," she said quietly. Doing what he asked, making the harder choice when there is an easier one right there, she said. "It is very inconvenient." "Sorry," he said. "I am out of practice with the easy ones." She watched him, her profile lit by the dashboard glow. "I love you," she said. The words landed between them without warning, heavy and simple. Her eyes widened a fraction, as if she had not meant to let them out yet. Color climbed into her cheeks. "I did not mean to say that," she added quickly. "I mean, I did. I just did not mean to say it right now in this car on this stretch of road." After salmon and paternal interrogation, there were candles in my head, possibly fireworks. Definitely not this turn lane. He gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, then loosened his hands. "I am fine with the turn lane," he said. "I love you too." She turned her head fully, then studying him, searching his face for any crack. Since when she asked, he thought back, to the frog chair, to the first time she handed June a book without prompting, to the way she had listened to his story about Mara without offering solutions. "Since before I knew it," he said. She exhaled, the breath shaky. "Okay," she said. He laughed once quietly. "Okay," he echoed. The bridge rose ahead of them, lights strung along its length. As they drove onto it, the city opened up on the far side, a scatter of windows against the dark. Tessa reached across the console and found his hand, their fingers laced together, steady on the space between them as the car carried them forward. The Seattle light in late February had a particular quality, thin and bright at the edges, as if the sun were still deciding how committed it wanted to be. Eli parked the Honda a block from the library and cut the engine. The streets were damp, but not shining, last night's rain still lingering in the cracks. He could see the glass and steel of the Seattle Central Library rising ahead angles, catching what light there was. In his jacket pocket, the small velvet box sat like a new kind of weight. June was spending the weekend at his parents' place in Tacoma. The apartment had felt too quiet that morning, without her voice bouncing off the walls. Now that silence felt useful. His hands could shake without her noticing. Tessa walked beside him toward the library doors, scarf wrapped around her throat, cheeks pink from the air. "You are being very mysterious," she said. "Library on a kid-free Saturday. I assume that was against your religion. Maybe I am expanding my beliefs," he said. Inside, the familiar smell of paper and dust met them. The huge atrium rose above their heads, sunlight filtering through the patterned glass. Without the usual layer of children's voices, the building felt larger and more echoing. "We are not going to the tomato room, are we?" Tessa asked. "I do not have the emotional energy for those red walls today." "Kids level," he said. "Trust me." She snorted. That phrase has a history. They rode the escalator down, listening to the soft, mechanical hum. The children's section opened in front of them, bright rugs and low shelves, frog chair yawning in one corner. Without Saturday's crowd, the space felt almost exposed. He led her toward the corner where they usually sat. The beanbags were empty. A stack of picture books leaned against the wall, as if June had just stepped away and forgotten them. Tessa slowed. "What are we doing?" she asked. He turned to face her. His pulse thudded in his ears. The world narrowed to her face, her hands, the little crease that appeared between her brows when she was wary. "This is where it changed," he said. "For me, for June, for you. Where you ambushed me twice," she said, but her voice had softened. "The first time, yeah," he said. "The second time you let me stay." He dropped to one knee. The carpet brushed his jeans, rough and familiar. His hand found the box in his pocket and brought it out. The lid creaked a little as he opened it. Tessa stared down at him. Her eyes went wide. For a heartbeat, she did not breathe. Inside the box, the ring sat on its small cushion. A single diamond, clear and bright, set on a slim band of white gold. Not huge, not shouting, but undeniable. "Tessa Lane," he said. "Or Tessa Langford if you are feeling formal. Or Tessa who builds ramps and annoys contractors and feeds my kid too many cookies." Her laugh hitched out in a tiny sound. "I came into your life on the worst possible night," he said. "I sat down at a table I did not deserve in front of a woman who had every right to walk away and never look back. You did walk away. And somehow, for reasons I still do not fully understand, you walked back." Her hands had flown to her mouth the moment he knelt. Now, one of them fell, fingers trembling at her side. "I want to keep walking that bridge," he said. "From the man I was that night to the man I'm trying to be now, with you, with June. I want library Saturdays and crooked ramps and too many questions about horses. I want to wake up in a world where your coffee is the first smell in the kitchen and pumpkin has already stolen my spot on the couch." Her eyes shone. Tears gathered, not falling yet. "So," he said, and his voice shook just once. "Will you marry me?" The silence that followed was full, not empty. The air felt thick, as if even the dust motes were waiting. She let out a breath that turned into a laugh halfway through. The first tear slipped over her lower lashes. "Yes," she said. "Of course, yes." He stood up on legs that felt less reliable than usual. She held out her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit as if someone had measured it with more than a tape. "She is going to lose her mind," Tessa said, looking at the stone. "June helped pick it," he admitted. "She said it should be sparkly, but not too sparkly, because you are fancy, but not fancy. Tessa laughed, a real full sound that bounced off the shelves. "Terrifying child," she said. "Accurate child." He pulled her in, then right there between the frog chair and the shelf of early readers. They kissed, gentle and sure, the kind of kiss that did not need an audience. A small voice behind him said, "I knew it." They broke apart. June stood near the end of the aisle, coat unzipped, hair a little mussed. Eli's mother peered around the corner, smiling with her whole face. "You were supposed to be in Tacoma," Eli said. "We were," his mother said. But June had a theory. "I told Grandma you might do it here," June said, stepping forward, eyes huge with delight. "At the library, because this is where everything started to get better, and I did not want to miss it." She looked at Tessa's hand, then squealed. "You said yes," she said. "You really said yes." Tessa crouched so they were closer to eye level. The ring caught the light between them. "I did," she said, "if that is all right with you." June flung her arms around Tessa's neck, with enough force to topple them both onto a beanbag. "It is very all right," she said into Tessa's shoulder. "We are going to be a whole family. Pumpkin too. He is my orange brother." From the doorway, Eli's mother pressed her fingers to her mouth, eyes bright. "Looks like the vote is unanimous," Eli said. Spring took its time, but it came. On a Saturday in late April, Eli stood in a small clearing at the Washington Park Arboretum, his palms damp against the stems of the bouquet he held. The air smelled like damp earth and new leaves. Dogwood blossoms hung above in soft clusters, white and pale pink. Rows of white folding chairs lined a path between low shrubs and flowering trees. At the end of the path, a simple wooden arch waited, wrapped with branches and fabric. Nora had insisted on checking the ground herself, making sure the route from the path to the arch was level and solid. If anyone trips, she had said, it will be from emotion, not bad design. The guests settled, coats unbuttoned now that the sun had committed. A handful of Tessa's colleagues, some of Eli's friends from the site. Charles near the front in a dark suit tie, slightly crooked, the look on his face more nervous than he would admit. Music started, soft notes from a string trio tucked under a tree. Eli's heart climbed into his throat. June appeared first. She wore a purple dress that puffed slightly when she walked, and a crown of tiny flowers that refused to sit straight in her hair. A small basket hung from one arm, filled with rose petals. She took her job with solemn seriousness, scattering petals one step at a time. Each petal landed like punctuation on the grass. When she reached the front, she shot Eli a quick, fierce smile, then moved to her spot beside Tessa's chosen attendant, feet planted chin up. The music shifted. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold itself still. Then Tessa appeared at the start of the path. She wore a cream-colored dress that followed the lines of her body without swallowing her. The skirt brushed the tops of her shoes. Her hair was pinned back on one side with a small spray of flowers. At her height, the arch and the trees around it looked taller, but she did not seem dwarfed. She seemed centered. Charles walked beside her, hand resting carefully at the middle of her back, not steering, just steady. When they reached Eli, Charles placed her hand in his. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "She knows how to stand on her own, but it is easier when someone is beside her, not behind or in front." "I know," Eli said. "I will." Charles nodded once and stepped back. The officiant, a woman from Tessa's nonprofit, smiled at them both, warmth and familiarity in her gaze. "We are not here to make something out of nothing," she said. "We are here to name what already exists." Two people who walked through their own separate storms and found to their surprise that they had been standing on the same bridge for a while now. Eli listened, though his focus kept sliding to Tessa's hand in his, the ring gleaming on her finger, the small tremor in her thumb. When it was time for vows, he took a breath. "Tessa," he said, and his voice steadied as he continued. "When I met you, I was a man who had made peace with just getting through. I had a kid I did not deserve, a job that hurt my back, and a list of bills that did not care how hard I worked. Hope felt like a dangerous luxury." He swallowed. "You looked at me on my worst night and saw exactly who I was," he said. "You did not dress it up. You did not let me off the hook. You made me tell the truth. Then you watched what I did with it. I want to spend every day earning the fact that you stayed. I will show up when it is easy and when it is not. I will keep listening when you tell me what you need, not what the world thinks you should want." He glanced at June. She smiled through tears she had insisted she would not shed. "I will love June with you," he said. "I will stand in the doorway when she has nightmares and build as many ridiculous blanket forts as needed. I will tie her shoes and teach her how to tie her own. I will keep building a life that makes room for all of us at our actual heights, not the ones other people decide." Tessa's eyes were wet. She sniffed once, inelegant and unconcerned. "My turn," she said. She took a breath that shook a little, then smoothed. "Eli," she began. "When I met you, I had built walls so high around myself that most people did not even see the person under them. They saw my height, my father's last name, their own reflection in all of that. I decided it was safer to be alone than to keep bracing for the moment someone turned me into a story they could tell without me." Her fingers tightened around his. "You walked into that restaurant and proved every cynical thought I had ever had," she said. "You also sat in a children's section and listened to my favorite 7-year-old talk about storms and dragons as if it mattered. You gave back money you desperately needed because you realized it was poisoned. You kept telling the truth even when it made everything harder. I watched. I doubted. I tested. You stayed." She let out a breath. "I promise to keep seeing you, as you are not as the man you were on your worst day," she said. "I promise to be patient when June asks me, for the 100th time, if Pumpkin can actually understand her, and to take her seriously when she draws a bridge and tells me where we are standing on it. I promise to keep fighting for doorways that are wide enough and thresholds that are low enough in our house and outside it." She smiled up at him through tears now. "I do not need you to be a hero," she said. "I need you to be honest and present and stubborn in the right directions. You already are." There was a quiet in the garden that was not really silence. Leaves rustled. Somewhere a car door closed in the distance. The guests shifted in their seats, wiping at eyes, smiling. The officiant nodded. "By the power of the state of Washington," she said, "and by the much older power of two people deciding to keep choosing each other, I pronounce you married." They kissed. It tasted like salt and air and something steady. June cheered so loudly she startled a nearby bird into flight. Laughter broke out across the clearing. The reception was small in a greenhouse at the edge of the garden. Long tables under glass strings of simple lights, food that was more comfort than show. There was a low ramp at the entrance and wide spacing between tables. Tessa's colleagues noticed. Some of them told her so. She shrugged and said it felt obvious. At one point, Charles stood with a glass in hand. "To my daughter," he said, "who has been fighting the world since she could reach the countertops, and to the man who decided to stand next to her while she does it. There are moments in life that crack us open. Sometimes what gets in after that is not darkness, but more sky." He lifted his glass. The room echoed him. June climbed onto a chair for her own speech. Her purple dress bunched at the knees, flower crown slightly crooked now. "I knew this was going to happen before anyone else," she announced. "Because they looked at each other like the people in my books look at each other when the author likes them." The room laughed. "Now we are a family," she went on. "Me and Dad, and Tessa and Pumpkin, and Grandma and Grandpa and Charles, but he says I can call him Charlie when he is not being serious." She paused, then added, "This is my favorite chapter so far." As evening settled, the light outside shifted to soft gold. Eli and Tessa slipped out onto a small wooden footbridge that arched over a narrow stream behind the greenhouse. The boards creaked gently under their combined weight. The garden around them glowed in the last of the sun. The air was cool on their faces, warm at their backs, where the greenhouse shared its stored heat. Eli's shoes were the same pair he had worn the night of the interview with Nora, polished now, laces double knotted. Tessa's shoes were flat and simple, their soles gripping the wood without fuss. June stood at the near end of the bridge with a small sketchbook. She frowned in concentration, tongue poking out between her teeth as she drew. The pencil moved sure and quick. "You are on a bridge again," she called. "We are," Eli said. Tessa laced her fingers through his. The ring flashed once in the fading light. "Where does it go?" Tessa asked. June looked up from the page. From before to after, she said. "Same as always." She went back to drawing. Behind them, inside the greenhouse, friends and family raised glasses, plates clinked, someone laughed hard enough to lean on the table. Pumpkin, who had been granted special indoor privileges for the evening, was likely curled in a corner under someone's chair, pretending he had not already been fed twice. On the bridge, Eli and Tessa stood side by side, hands joined the wood solid under their feet, and the water moving quietly below. The city hummed in the distance. The garden breathed around them. For the first time in a long time, the future did not feel like a threat or a test. It felt like a path stretching ahead, the planks worn smooth by use wide enough for 3 people and an orange cat to walk together. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.